Hey, welcome to another patch breakdown. If you're watching this, it means you are one of our Patreon subscribers, which means you give us money every month to help us keep doing what we're doing. So thank you, very much appreciated. Today we have Jason Duggaman, aka Donald Crunk. Say hello.
Hi.
Very, very excited.
Hi, all cameras.
Oh dear. So we're going to talk about his patch that he did at the July 6th Mod Nights and the July 19th Modular on Your Spot that we did across from Patchworks. So if you were either of those shows, you've already heard this patch, and now you can kind of see how it's made. So yeah, I would say, there's a handful of modular artists in Seattle that have like a distinct sound. Like if I heard this patch without knowing you made it, I would know you made it because Donald Crunk very much has a sound. So maybe before we get into like the nitty gritty, kind of talk about what you think gives Donald Crunk that crunk sound.
Sure. I think like everyone, you kind of gravitate towards what you like, and so it's sort of like an amalgam of the music that I like, both in the modular world and like in the non-modular world.
Yeah, it's like, what is that?
So I think Laurie Spiegel is a huge influence on me. She did a lot of sort of early computer-driven stuff. Really steppy sounding, very complex, and a lot of sort of canons that repeat themselves and sort of interlock with each other.
Yeah.
So she is sort of like the master of that, and I
hear you saying that, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah, I really enjoy that's like the sounds that she used for a lot of her music are very simple. There are a lot of times they're just square waves generated by like a digital system.
Right.
But the way she composed them, the way she used that simple sound to kind of really build intricate melodies, I really like. So I tend to focus, like my kind of deal is I tend to focus more on the sort of sequencing element, and I spend like maybe less time on the sound design than a lot of other artists do.
Interesting.
So so like a lot of times my audio chains are pretty short and basic.
Really?
Whereas my sequencing or like my Logic stuff will be like maybe more complex.
Okay, interesting. Okay, well that's a kind of a great segue actually. Something I like to do with all these is I kind of like to walk through every single sound source and every single element in the patch, and then kind of break down what is making that sound and how it's making that sound, and cool things that are going on, and then kind of hear them all come together.
Would you want to look at like kind of a lead sound maybe first?
Up to you. Just
I'll just go like one by one
through
what I've got on the mixer.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I've got like a little pattern running now, and I'll turn it up. Alright, that's nice. Got a little like FM being introduced there once in a while.
Yeah, see, this is like the Donald Crunk sound. It's very like, it's
sort of happy.
It's happy. It's bouncy, is what it is.
Yeah,
it's very bouncy.
I like that. I mean, like, there's enough like hard stuff in the world and in our lives.
Totally.
Like, I just kind of want to be happy
totally.
when I'm making music. So
which is kind of funny because it's like your name's Donald Crunk.
Yeah, there's
kind of the antithesis to
if you want to tie it if you tie it to the like current political happenings, it's kind of messed up when you think of it that way. I deliberately chose to hang on to that name after playing under that name for like 10 plus years,
right?
Because it's like I don't give a shit if he's the president right now. I'm just gonna like do what I love to do.
I like it because it like. You do have that happy, bouncy sound, and so it's kind of antithetical to like what we're kind of seeing.
I think it certainly surprises people,
and it works.
Yeah.
It works really well. But
Thank
anyways, I digress. Continue with what you were saying.
So anyway, we have sort of a lead sound now, and for that I'm using the DPO, which is like one of the most inspirational modules I probably ever purchased.
Dual oscillator, for those who don't know.
A dual oscillator has a bunch of normalization happening under the hood.
Okay.
So you can see, like, there's actually, like, not much patched onto this
Right,
oscillator.
you have, like, 3 cables coming
Yeah. So it seems like it's not doing very much, but actually, because it's normal to the Rix Mix, which is sort of a companion module, a mixing module.
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, all these outputs are normal to these inputs.
No way.
So I don't have to have any cables patched, which is nice.
That is
you
really
know,
nice.
fewer cables.
Yeah, okay. So then what's going on in the DPO under the hood?
It's being sequenced. Just this first oscillator is being sequenced.
So you're only using one of the two.
You can hear the other one. It's playing along with it, and it's doing some modulation of the other one. So you hear every once in a while it kind of does a little fuzzy thing.
Yeah, like it pops.
Yeah, and that's when you see that little LED light up. That's what brings in the sort of variation. That's the FM that's happening. You can exaggerate it a little bit more. Yeah, so that's that nice. Oscillator modulating that oscillator, and that oscillator is also modulating that oscillator.
Ooh.
So when they modulate each other, it kind of starts to get a little exponential.
It's like, that's awesome. Just the constant back and forth FM.
And since they're in kind of a loop with each other, that's kind of a unique thing you can do with this oscillator that a lot of many oscillators don't offer.
Right.
And then this is just sort of moving around on those outputs, so you can kind of use control voltage to kind of select which output you're listening to. And right now we're listening to just like a couple of them at a time, but I can turn this knob up, which will allow me to hear like more of them at a time, or I can like turn the output up. I can move around in that if I turn the radiator up.
So the Rix Mix is a mixer specifically designed for the DPO?
That's one of the things it can do. It also is able to attach to a fixed filter. So it's a filter that you plug into, and then it allows you to sort of have individual outputs from each frequency band, and it mixes them together in the Rix Mix. They recently retired both of those modules and replaced them both with a Q-Pass. So that's the same idea there,
Gotcha.
just implemented differently.
Gotcha.
This module has like a Vactrol in the output, so you can kind of ping it with something and it'll do like the decayed thing. It doesn't do as well as the Optimix in my opinion.
So I'm gonna be honest. All this time doing modular, I never bothered to learn what a Vactrol is. So why don't you enlighten us?
A Vactrol is an opto-isolating electronic component, which means that it doesn't pass electricity through it all the way. So sometimes in the world of electricity, you want to like isolate one thing from another thing, but you still want some signal to go through.
Right.
So instead of electricity going, they use light. And electricity passes through a little LED, it turns it on, lights up, and then on the other side, there's a photo cell, like a photo sensor, and it's receptive to that light. It sees the light turning on, and then that's what allows it to send out a little bit of electricity. So
practically, why would you want a Vactrol in your system?
Because it creates that light turning on creates a really natural decay when it turns off. It's not electricity, it's light. So if you shut off a light bulb in a room, you can see if you do it in slow-mo, you can see the shadows retreat. They don't all just go off at once.
Suddenly.
They move literally at the speed of light away from the light source that's turning on.
I gotcha.
That's what happens with the Vactrol. Instead of just the electricity just shutting off altogether, it kind of has that natural decay.
Right. I bet that's super useful for audio, because then you avoid pops.
You avoid pops, but you can also get that, instead of just, like, if you feed a trigger into a Vactrol, instead of just hearing, just like, dut, 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 you might hear a bung, 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 because you've got that decay coming off the back end. So it's more like a bongo than it is a staccato sound. So people, it kind of adds, like, almost a natural reverb, a natural airiness to it.
Is that the secret to the Donald Crunk sound?
I do love Vactrols, right? This Optimix is something that I use pretty heavily. So yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. But how you modulate that Vactrol, a Vactrol, like as implemented here, it's just a VCA with that part imparting its own sort of response to it.
You know, now that you say it, though, I hear it totally just coming out of this sequence. I hear that, like you kind of said, like a bongo. You know,
Yeah.
I kind of hear that decay. I kind of hear that like pluckiness.
Mhm. That's
That's really nice.
very unique to the Vactrol, I think.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Okay.
So that's really simple, and then the final part of it is going through a spring reverb here, which is actually built into my case. It's just a
Okay.
little brick. It's in a 1U tile.
So wait, so you're using spring reverb and also sending things to the OTO?
Yeah. Yep. So like
Reverb?
for this particular sound, I just use the spring reverb usually.
Okay.
I mean, I can turn on the other reverb as well, and that has like a more traditional reverb sound.
Very, like I said earlier, cavernous.
Yeah, really like a huge sound. It might be too huge, in fact. But I really like spring reverb too. It's got a really unique sort of bright, like kind of. I mean, it sounds like what the name is. It's very springy.
Yeah, it's a little tinny.
It's very tinny, and I think that's actually that is a characteristic of the spring reverb tank I'm using, which is fairly small.
Okay, so it's like a short.
Yeah, it's like one of the little blue ones you get
Yeah.
in like cheap guitar amps a lot.
Right.
So I think if I up that to like a medium, it would sound better, more full.
The thing is, I don't think you need it, because I think it's nice to have those short little subtle reverbs, especially because you have the OTO,
Yeah,
right?
especially for like kind of like poppy stuff like that, where you just kind of want to hear that.
Yeah.
It has its own unique sound, and I really like that.
Yeah. No, that's nice. Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's all being sequenced by let me talk about that in a second, because I'll go to the next voice, which is the Piston Honda. And then you'll hear that's actually playing the same melody as the first one. But we'll talk about how that is.
This sounds
arranged.
This is like mallet percussion.
Mhm.
This is like marimba kind of sound.
So that's the bongo that I was talking about. So that is your Vactrol response right there.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Blum, 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 blum.
Oh,
And
shit.
now that is also helped out a lot by the way that Make Noise does their attack decay envelopes. So
Yeah.
they have a really like exponential. If you turn that knob over to EXP, that's going to give you a really like staccato sound, coupled with the Vactrol. You really get that boom, 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 kind of West Coast sound.
I love it.
Yeah,
That sounds fantastic.
it's one of my favorite sounds for sure. And then, so yeah, this is two voices. This is a stereo voice
Okay.
of one channel of the Piston Honda, channel A going into the top, and channel B is going into the bottom of it. And a lot of times this module has preset capability. So what I can do is right now it's just not doing anything with the preset, but I can go over here and I can actually like make it change presets here a little bit. That's not really obvious right now because
I definitely heard a difference for sure.
I don't have the envelopes opened up. But now the other thing I like to do with this Piston Honda voice and the DPO voice is I have the envelope generators that are like, you know, opening and letting the sound out connected to this joystick, so that when I move the joystick up to the right, it'll open the envelopes up, and when I close them and I move it down to the bottom, it, you know, makes them smaller. So I can kind of do build-ups just with the one joystick now.
Can I hear it?
Sure.
That is so nice. Ooh, that's fantastic. So, I'm guessing you're using the function
Yes.
as your...
Yes,
and
two functions.
And then the joystick is modulating
The rise
and fall.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just going into the fall, and
Just
for
fall,
both of these, I've got like the X going into one fall and the Y going into another fall. So the bass line has its own function, and the primary melody has its own. And I can open them both up by just pushing the joystick up to the top right.
Right.
And that's what gives me like the big open sound, and then I can, you know, move it to the lower left and kind of tighten things up.
Right. Or conversely, you can move to the bottom right and have one of the sounds be open and one of them stay closed.
Exactly.
That's cool. It gives you a lot
or you
of
can
really...
just, you can just
yeah,
go nuts with it and just get it all over the place.
Yeah, that's super cool. It gives you a lot of like a really easy way to give a lot of variation to your patch.
Yeah, and instead of like having to go, it's not a big deal. In fact, that's what I usually do. Is I just go hands-on on the modules, and I just turn the knob from exponential to logarithmic.
Right.
And that's usually what I use to kind of open my sound up during the build-ups. But in this case, I can just do that. That makes it easier, and I can automate that movement, record it, because this particular joystick can record movement. So
there you go.
I can record that.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, that's pretty much what the Piston Honda is doing. It's like I said, the preset can be changed. If I don't want to use the presets, I can modulate the wavetables directly with these 3 inputs.
So it's a wavetable oscillator.
Yes, it's a wavetable oscillator. It's the newest one from Scott, who's local here. And so
I didn't know those. What's the company?
It is Industrial Music Electronics.
Yeah, I didn't know they were local. That's
yes,
crazy.
he's in Mukilteo. So yeah, like one town south from you. So I have his sequencer and his oscillator. Scott was one of the first people I ever met near Iraq, like 11 years ago.
No way.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a great guy. And in my opinion, one of the most advanced digital designers in Iraq right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of his previous stuff kind of sounded maybe a little bit harsh for some people. This thing is just clean and pure and just so beautiful sounding. I really love it.
So what are you like? You sending? This could also be a question for the DPO voice as well. Like, are you sending these through like any filters or?
No, so far not.
Really?
So like, basically the DPO voice from the reverb, it just goes straight into my mixer.
Okay.
So I basically got raw output coming into a mixer that's got a Vactual, so there's a little bit of VCAing going on.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the reverb and then out, no filter. Wow. So my frequency control is dictated by which output I'm listening to. If I listen to the sine waves, it's going to be a real smooth sound. If I move that to like the saw wave or something like that, it'll be a sharper sound.
Right. Okay.
So that's how I do frequency kind of movement there, kind of in an additive way.
Yeah.
So yeah, but in the same with the Piston Honda, I'm just coming straight from the Piston Honda, going into my Optimix, and then taking an individual output from each of those channels straight into the mixer. Wow. So again, that's just acting like a VCA. This module is amazing because you can make any sound within that oscillator. Right. You really don't need much filtering. You could do a lot of stuff just by modulating it directly.
That's fantastic.
So
I also love how you don't have an onboard mixer. You just go straight out.
Yeah, straight out. It can handle it. Like, it doesn't clip or anything. So
it's hard to keep the levels relatively low.
Yeah, you got to keep the level, like the gain inputs, relatively low. Some mixers are worse at it than others, but this little Yamaha is fine. So.
Okay, yeah.
So that's the Piston Honda. But let me bring in the first one too.
Yeah.
And you can hear they're all three playing the same melody. Let me get rid of this goofy like FM stuff going on.
Oh no, it's good. A little bit, yeah.
A little bit, a little taste.
They blend really well.
They do, yeah.
Like the way they're stacked together.
The DPO, like, it doesn't change as radically as the Piston Honda can change, so it kind of helps to anchor the sequence, whereas the Piston Honda can jump around a bunch. But if I open this up a little bit, what I want to kind of make people hear is that it's the same sequence being fed to 3 oscillators, but they're all one step behind each other. So,
wow.
Yeah, so I'm doing that with a module called an ASR, or an analog shift register.
Okay, what does that do?
So what an ASR does is it takes like a control voltage pattern, say. You feed it into an input, and you also have a trigger input. So you feed it a voltage and a trigger.
Sure.
And then it has 3 or more outputs, and those are intended to go to oscillator inputs. So I can feed a control voltage into it, and then that same control voltage will appear at this first output. Now when it receives a trigger, that control voltage that appeared at the first output will get passed on to the second output. And then it'll re-listen to the first input, and it'll make that output appear at the first one.
So it
then
really
it'll
is
get
like,
another
like
trigger.
a cannon.
Exactly. It just goes one after the other, one after the other. And you get these really cool arpeggios.
I love that. You know, that is interesting. Something I've always noticed about your music is it's like, it feels like I'm listening to all these different voices and sequences, but at the same time, everything sounds so tight-knit and cohesive. And I guess that would be why, because it really is all just the same sequence.
It's my yeah, that's something I do a lot. Is the ASR analog shift register is probably my favorite single type of module, just because it's really unique. It's like a sample and hold, but it has more outputs.
Right.
So it does the same job though.
Okay.
This particular one also has a quantizer. You know, it quantizes and does that.
Way.
So yeah.
That is fantastic.
So it's basically feeding the DPO and both channels of the piston Honda.
Wow.
The other cool thing it can do is when I hit a button on the joystick, it'll hold the 3 notes that are in the ASR and it'll just rotate through them. So I can do. And so you can do some really cool performance tricks that way.
Man, that joystick is killer, man.
Yeah, and I can record, that action as well. So I can.
Oh my god.
You can just do a lot of stuff. With that
man,
joystick.
Bradley, I can't do these interviews anymore, man. It makes me want to buy shit, man. Alright, anyways, continue.
Another popular module that does this that I think more people have is the ornament and crime.
Yeah.
So
Wait, that does that?
It does this.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
It has 4 outputs instead of just 3.
Oh shit.
So you can
have
make
that.
huge. Yeah. There you go. Patched up like an ASR. I forget. Copier machine is the little thing that does it.
Shit, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I'm learning so much. This is great. Okay, so moving on with your voices, I see you have the STO.
Yes.
patch as
Okay.
well.
I think we haven't talked about that.
The same sequence, I'm guessing.
No, different pattern.
Oh, you got me.
This is the bass line. So yeah, the first sequence number 1 on my Stilson hammer is feeding the piston Honda and the DPO. So it's like doing the most, it's feeding the most stuff. But this one is just feeding the STO. And the STO is then going through a filter by another local, a new local manufacturer.
Shout out to Tom Evans.
Who built this and has been letting me test it. And it's an amazing filter.
Yeah,
it's a dual low-pass filter. And it's just really nice. It has kind of a unique kind of crossfade feature. Yeah. I really like it. So I'm playing that, and like the other voices, I can open the envelope on that one with this joystick.
Oh my god, amazing. That's cool, because then you can have it doing more traditional bassline stuff, but where you had it before, it was doing a lot more like kick drum percussive kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you mute it way down like that, it'll kind of be more poppier.
The envelope is tighter.
Really tight, yeah.
Wait, so what are you using for the envelope there? Because you have the
function. So the first function is running all of the voices. I have it multiplied a whole bunch. So it's running all of the primary voice.
No way.
Like opening all the valves, so to speak, for that one. And then for the bass line, this one is feeding into both channels of the filter.
Okay.
Gotcha. And then I've got another channel of my sequencer that's turning on the S gate, which is what fires off that like low frequency oscillator. Right. So if you open it up, you'll hear it.
Right.
That's just the S gate firing via a trigger. So
man. The STO, it's a small oscillator, but it's powerful.
It sounds really good. It's really nice to have this thing, like, all this other stuff can be doing this huge cloud of sound, and I can bring this thing in and bring it up real loud, and it's always going to be, like, really focused sound.
Yeah, it's like a really pure sounding oscillator, too.
Yes. I like that.
Wow. Okay.
And I think that output is just coming, it's coming out of here, and I'm mixing it together in a mixer that I designed. And it's just coming out, and that's it for the bass line.
Wow.
So it's another pretty short. I like short signal chains because the more stuff you go through, the more you lose at some point. Like It's not always true, but it's just sort of like in audio. That's just always been sort of my rule of thumb.
No, totally.
Fewer gain stages, the better. So
right.
I try to just get right in there and get a nice, clean, strong sound.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool. Okay, so what's the Phonogene doing?
Phonogene is not doing as much. It is. I tend to use the Phonogene as like a delay that captures parts, sort of. So that's kind of how I have it employed here. It's got its own sequencer channel that's triggering either the playback or the record. So I often when I'm playing, I'll just switch this jack over, so I can like listen to whatever's going on. I think it's listening to the piston on now. So the piston on is being fed into there. It'll record whatever it's doing, according to my triggers. Ooh, play it back. No, it's loudly. I've produced a fart sound.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Which is not unheard of in the modular world. So, but yeah, I just kind of use it to kind of like capture elements of a pattern.
Like kind of just resample it.
Kind of resample it. Kind of adds. Sometimes it'll add kind of a percussion element. Sometimes it'll just do whatever it wants, like it is now. It just. I don't know how it's doing that.
No, that's kind of what I love about like the Phonogene Morphogene. Yeah. It's like
it still surprises you.
It's crazy.
No matter how. Yeah. And so I use this. I think a Morphogene would work just as well for what I use it for,
totally.
Which is just a sampling delay, more or less.
Right on. Well, it sounds awesome. Like, that's a great little granular.
Yeah, it makes a nice percussion element or just some sort of like interesting kind of element in the background.
Man, now I want one of those too.
Phonogenes are cool. They're probably cheap now.
I think you'd be surprised.
So that's pretty much I think what all the audio voices are doing. Wow. I think the only other things that I didn't cover were I use a lot of utilities. I use mults just a lot. I think it's really important to like, if you have something that's doing something important, like send that important signal out to a bunch of different things, and that way you can have a really kind of unified sound and response.
Well, and I think that also lends to your sound so glued together.
Sure, yeah, because I have one envelope.
Do a lot of mults.
Yeah, I have one envelope that's affecting like 6 different things right now.
How many mults do you
have? In this system, I have this set of 4, this set of 4. There's a set there.
It's a lot.
And there's a set there that I'm not using currently.
Wow.
So I have a lot of mults, and then that's plus all of the stackables and the IVs that I'm using. Right. So all in all, there's probably 25 mults in this system.
Well, that's fantastic, and I think that for people like myself who are like trying to be better at composing on more self-contained, smaller systems like this, mults go a very long way.
Yeah, you wouldn't. It's interesting because you wouldn't think so. You would think in a smaller system that maybe you would like not want mults because you just have fewer modules.
Because it uses space.
Yeah, right. But obviously, there's other ways to do mults other than have a module. But it's just super important. Like in every system, I think to have multiples at least some way. Whether it's a module or whether it's stackables. Or something. It's just like the most key utility you can have.
Right.
So I have a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And all my systems have a bunch of mults.
So like, what other like audible like utility or like modulation is going on? Like what are you using to affect these voices?
The other thing that I'm doing is this planar has 4 outputs on it up here. I'm sending those 4 outputs into the 4 inputs of my sequential switch matrix here.
Whoa, okay.
And I'm taking 4 outputs from that and just sending them to the various modulation destinations.
Okay.
So what happens, and it's not a predictable modulation source, but I can, as I move this around and record the results or whatever, my primary purpose for this joystick is to open my envelopes up. But as I move them, it also sends different values to my sequential switch matrix.
Wow.
And so I can, switch to kind of a different set of presets there, and then those signals will go out to a set of modules. I can change the preset, and it'll go to a different set of modules. so I don't have to
Wow.
repatch.
Jeez.
So that allows me
That's
to
intense.
send. Yeah, that allows me to send this joystick to different modules throughout the system without having to repatch it.
This joystick is basically controlling your entire patch.
More or less. I try to approach it from like a traditional instrument standpoint where you've got a posture and you've got your hands and you're in front of it and you have something for your right hand to do and something for your left hand to do.
Right.
And for me, for this system right now, that's the joystick. And I used to just do the envelopes and I'd have another envelope generator down here. And then that would be my right hand job. Now I've got the joystick. And then for my left hand job, I run the sequencer and I have these FSRs here. And those are just force sensing resistors, and I kind of use them like trumpet buttons a little bit. You can like bring stuff in and out, or one of them I have set up for the reset of the Stilson hammer, so I can like do like tricks with the sequencer and stuff.
Wow. So yeah, that's actually perfect, because my next question was going to be like, do you change the melodic sequence up a lot while you perform?
The Stilson hammer really allows you to do that.
It's a really performance-based sequence.
Very much.
Right? Yeah.
And I really like stuff that you don't have to focus on too heavily. I really like stuff that you can really just kind of paw at and you'll get good results out
you
of
can
it.
just move the faders.
You really can.
I got a
And you're
nice
just like,
melody.
oh, it's amazing. And so the Stilson hammer really excels at that. It excels at introducing variation via the assignable controllers there. So these knobs can be assigned to any parameter, any sequencing parameter. And then as you turn them up, it turns that value up, per step or whatever you have programmed. And of course, I'm also feeding in one of the outputs from my matrix over here that's getting fed with the joystick. So it's all kind of interconnected. You can maybe hear the sequence change. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's set up to modulate that, but typically that's what I'll do is I'll move the joystick around and it'll change the notes in the melody as I move the joystick, in addition to all the other things the joystick's doing.
Okay.
So it can, as you record a little pattern into there, that can introduce an additional pattern to the sequencer. So it kind of just a bunch of variation going on.
So when you perform, when you prepare a set, do you think much about structure?
Yeah.
Okay. How so? Like, do you kind of do like, okay, this is gonna be my intro, this is gonna be like the body, and this is what I'm gonna do? Or,
It usually works out to be like with the links that we usually play at around here. It usually works out to be like 3 structures, as I call it. Like that's an apt name because I haven't thought of a better one.
Yeah.
Songs isn't right.
Right.
So 3 structures, each of about 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay.
And I try to have a structure be like an exciting, self-contained thing that has sections maybe, or maybe it has a build-up, or maybe it's the quiet part in the middle and there's some other stuff going on.
Right.
I usually try to theme each section differently so that I'm not trying to like repeat myself too much, which I do a lot of. So it's I typically, and then the sections usually in this case usually end up being a combination of presets on the Stilson hammer and presets on the matrix, plus some knob movements. And so then that creates a new sequence, or creates a new pattern, or brings me to a new pattern.
Gotcha. Okay. The reason I ask is because the way your system and the way this patch is set up is you can kind of just like let things run for 20 minutes and then just move the joystick and change the sequence and just kind of almost like improvise on it.
Totally.
And that would be a viable performance.
Mm-hmm.
That's just why I was wondering.
You absolutely can. The problem I have a lot of times is I tend to work in similar key signatures. So to get out of this, to it's always an awkward transition for me to switch keys or switch scales or something like that. So
do you do that often? Or?
Not often. I typically will stay in like a pentatonic or a major.
Yeah.
As everyone knows.
Yeah.
But
I don't think I've ever heard you play in a minor key.
I used to a lot, and that was just like what I thought everyone did in the synth world all the time.
Because it was moody.
Because it's moody, and I thought it would be cool, and like I like that stuff, but it just didn't suit me. And then I found out like, oh, major stuff can also sound really like kind of scary and overwhelming if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like the fact that like you're happy and then like, oh no, now I'm too happy. Now I'm overwhelmed. Oh my god.
Right.
So it's kind of like a fun.
Do you have like a favorite major key? Like I do D or A major.
Yeah. I like D major a lot. C major. I'm so basic.
Well,
so.
no, I do a lot of C major because it's easy. It's easy, right? Well, especially because you were saying the Piston Honda, it holds a C tune really well.
Yeah,
so it's probably really easy for you to just tune that to a C.
Oh my god,
tune everything else
so
to a C
easy. Yeah, and then I'm good, and that has reduced my stress a lot for pre-show.
Yeah.
That was always the biggest source of stress for me was keeping my stuff in tune.
You're right. I think everyone has that.
Yeah.
To an extent.
So it's nice to have that as a reference.
Absolutely.
I can listen to it.
Absolutely.
Tune to it.
Okay, shit, right on. So last thing I really kind of want to ask you about is you keep a lot of notes on your case.
Yeah.
So are those just like general notes that you kind of use all the time, or are these very patch performance
very much specific for. If I have like a few shows in a row, like which I've had the last couple weeks, then I'll just kind of keep it all the same because I usually won't have time to do a new patch and like come up with a thing.
It takes time.
It does, and
we're
I do.
Adults with jobs.
Yeah, and I do put effort into it. Like anytime like you see me playing a show, there's always been like quite a few hours of practice that I put into it.
And I think people can tell. Like
good.
Like you are always seem very well prepared when you are on stage, and you always seem really comfortable with what you're playing. Like I think of all the people I've seen perform, myself included, it's like you are the only one, at least as far that I can think of, who's like up there like you're like dancing along with the patch, and you're like feeling that you're moving it because you're comfortable with it.
Yeah,
right?
well, it just comes with like banging on the same modules for years and like
Totally.
just getting confident.
Right, and I think that's like a really great practice. Holding on to the same modules and really getting to know those modules.
Yeah, and keeping your system a manageable size. Like if you're always rocking a 15U or whatever,
which are cool.
They're amazing for studio use, for performance, for everything. It's harder to like if I perform with a system that big, I'm stressed a little bit because there's a lot to keep track of.
Totally. Well, also too, I think like at least in my opinion, like the sets I'm most impressed by, like not to like knock anyone with a big system because like that's cool, like do your thing. But I'm really impressed when people are able to get like as much sound as you're getting out with a smaller contained system.
Thanks.
And I think
that was a big drive for me in Eurorack in general. I came up in Illinois around a lot of people that had really big setups of gear, like lots of synths, lots of modular drum machines, and this thought was that like the more stuff you have, the better you are, right? Like
right.
And maybe it's like a confidence thing or something. And I went down that path for a really long time, and I collected like a bunch of junk in my studio. And I just, by the time I left Seattle, by the time I moved here from Illinois, I had all this stuff that I had to like get rid of that wasn't really doing me any good.
Right.
And so I decided, like, I've been playing modular for like 7 or 8 years, and I decided, like, wait, I'm going out to the West Coast. I should really focus on my performance skills in my, because modular on the spot was a new thing that year.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I figured there's probably going to be one starting up in Seattle. And so I made the decision before I moved out there to really get a set going.
Nice.
And so I practiced that set, then I moved out here, I practiced it some more. That was what ended up being like the first Gasworks modular on the spot.
Oh, no way.
So I had been practicing that set for a long time because I was really enthusiastic about
that's awesome.
Playing outdoors, which is something that's pretty exclusive to like here. Like we didn't really do that in the Midwest.
Right.
So
is there a big modular scene out from where you're from?
In Chicago, there is. I'm from 3 hours south in a city called Peoria.
Okay.
And we have a couple artists there, but it's there's not a ton going on. Obviously, it's a smaller city.
Yeah.
So, But I really was fascinated by the idea of being able to take a small suitcase, one trip from your car, and just like set up somewhere and like have people just kind of like, what the hell is he doing? And then you play something and it's like, whoa, like everyone's like doesn't know what's going on because they've never seen this block of wires or whatever. Right. And I really had the mental image of sort of the acoustic guitarist from like the 1960s, like with his guitar on his back. And like he's just this guy. He's gonna sit down. He can take his music anywhere. He can play for anyone.
Right. Play Wonderwall.
Yeah, this is the modern version of that. Like I can pack this up. I can take it to the park. I can hang out with my friends. I can make some music. Yeah. It's a folk instrument in that sense. Yeah. So I was really attracted by that in a self-contained instrument concept. Yeah. And that's sort of the opposite of the modular is a large studio system. Totally. Which is also a really great thing, and I'm trying to set up my system to do that in some ways, but it's different.
No, I love this too because it also like, in a kind of disconnected way, it lends to the whole community aspect of modular music. Totally. Because if you had a big studio thing, it's like you can only really show people if they come to your place, right?
Oh, yeah.
But with this, you're able to bring it everywhere and have people interact with it. Listen to it.
Absolutely. And like the bigger your rig is or like the more stuff you have, the fewer gigs you're probably going to play too. Yeah. So having a small system makes it so that I can just kind of say yes to like whatever is going on.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Well, very cool. I think that is all the questions I had.
Awesome.
Thank you very much
for
breaking your patch down. Thank you again to those tuning in and who are giving us money every month.
Thanks to that van in my parking lot. He's leaving.
So I think we'll wrap this up. We'll just put the camera on you and have you just play for like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And just so we can kind of hear all the things we talked about kind of come together.
Right on.
So... yeah.
Awesome.
Let's do it.